You're watching and listening to the Electronic Intifada live stream. I'm Ali Abu Ni'mah, here with my colleague Nora Barrows-Friedman. The Trump administration is rapidly escalating its ferocious crackdown on free speech and the rule of law. New reports of human rights abuses by American authorities emerge seemingly every hour, while the administration becomes ever more flagrant in defying and ignoring orders from courts, including the Supreme Court. On Wednesday, James Boasberg, the chief U.S. district judge in Washington, D.C., said he was launching proceedings to determine whether Trump administration officials should face criminal contempt charges for defying his order not to remove Venezuelan migrants from the country based on the Alien Enemies Act, a rarely used law from 1798. According to the Washington Post, the law was last used during World War II to detain Japanese, Italian, and German nationals, and it laid the foundation for the incarceration of more than 110,000 Japanese Americans. And on Tuesday, U.S. District Judge Paula Sinis in Maryland admonished the administration for defying a Supreme Court order directing U.S. officials to facilitate the return of Kilmar Armando Abrego Garcia, a Salvadoran citizen illegally deported to El Salvador, where he's being detained in a notorious prison. Meanwhile, there has been no let-up in the administration's crackdown on international students and lawful permanent residents under the false pretext of combating anti-Semitism and terrorism. Hundreds of students have had their visas revoked, while several, including Mahmur Khalil and Rumeysa 𝐓𝐡𝐞 remain incarcerated. And on Wednesday, President Trump asked the Internal Revenue Service to revoke the tax-exempt status of Harvard University after the institution rejected administration demands that would have effectively placed it under government control. The university will not surrender its independence or relinquish its constitutional rights, Harvard President Alan Garber wrote in an open letter. The administration has already suspended billions of dollars in federal grants to Harvard and other universities it is attempting to force into submission. There are increasing signs that the Trump crackdown will not be limited to non-citizens. In comments during a press conference with Salvadoran President Najib Bukele this week, Trump suggested that he wanted to start sending U.S. citizens to prisons there as well, a move that would be illegal and unconstitutional. We originally announced that we were to be joined today by Abid Ayoub, the National Director of the American Arab Anti-Discrimination Committee, to talk about the rapidly escalating human rights crisis. But due to a last-minute scheduling conflict, we're very pleased instead to be joined by Chris Godshall-Bennett. He is the legal director of ADC. Welcome to the Electronic Intifada live stream, Chris.
Thanks for having me.
Good to have you, Chris.
Thanks very much. Chris, on Monday, federal agents arrested Mohsen Mahdawi, a lawful permanent resident, as he attended his citizenship interview in Colchester, Vermont, the state where he lives. Mahdawi is a Palestinian born in a refugee camp in the occupied West Bank and had been a student at Columbia University, where he co-founded the Palestinian Student Union along with Mahmur Khalil. This video of the arrest was posted online by Mahdawi's friend Christopher Hilali and has been seen by millions of people. Mahdawi has been a lawful permanent resident in the US for 10 years, and according to his lawyers, had advocated for a peaceful resolution between Israelis and Palestinians in different forms, such as public speeches, community engagement, and storytelling initiatives. He had also vocally condemned anti-Semitism. None of that protected him from being arrested. We're going to ask you about Mahmur Khalil in a moment, but tell us what you know about the arrest of Mohsen Mahdawi, and particularly what it means that he was arrested during a citizenship interview.
Yeah, I mean, I think fundamentally the way to understand these actions is an attack on any dissent whatsoever. It doesn't matter the style, it does not matter the forum. they are using these extreme and shocking situations, right? Someone going for their citizenship interview, right? Completely doing everything that these people say you're supposed to do in this process. And the point really is shock and awe, right? It is meant, I believe, when the so-called anti-Semitism executive order was promulgated, there were public statements by the administration that the point was to set back the Palestinian solidarity movement in the United States 20 to 30 years, right? So the effort here is not just about the individuals, though of course our hearts and our thoughts and our minds and our efforts are with them because they're paying the price. The goal is to scare everyone out of their activism, even to the not just they're going to a protest, right? But talking at an event, posting something online, like the very, very, very basics. So it's an attack on not only, I think, the idea of who gets to be part of the American community. That is certainly one of their goals, but the other goal is certainly to eradicate dissent and under the guise of supposed anti-Semitism. I believe with him as well, his good Jewish friend wrote recently about how it's shocking to them, and they're, I believe, a Zionist even, and they were just like, the idea of saying he's an anti-Semite is absurd. So it really just shows, I think, that their goal is to really shock and scare everyone away from any sort of activism. And I think it reflects that they've lost, right? I mean, they've lost the ideological fight here. I'm Jewish. I've been involved in Palestine activism for a long time now. And, when I was young, it was a few of us. And now I believe it's well over 50% of young Jews, right? The fight is lost in terms of opinion. And so they're resorting to, I think, these fascist techniques to suppress dissent and to scare the crap out of everybody, frankly, to get them to stop.
Yeah. Yeah. And last week, an immigration judge in Louisiana ruled that Mahmur Khalil, a lawful U.S. permanent resident with a green card, can be deported under Secretary of State Marco Rubio's baseless claim that Khalil's presence and beliefs threaten U.S. foreign policy interests. What does this ruling mean for him and for constitutional rights, especially free speech more generally? Does this mean he's about to be deported? What are rights even in this context?
No, so he's not about to be deported. He remains in what we nicely call civil detention, in immigration detention, which is incarceration. It's a complicated legal process because he has pending habeas relief, which is an effort to get him out of detention while his immigration proceeding is going, which I should note is a totally normal thing to do. Immigration detention is not meant to be used for this purpose, right? It's meant, I think, the two sort of legal reasons are flight risk and or danger, right? It's meant to be sort of used in those extreme situations because immigration is a quote unquote civil procedure. So what this ruling means is that in Louisiana, in the immigration court, the immigration judge has stated that the removal is lawful. Now that will be, in that process, appealed to the Board of Immigration Appeals, and then depending on what they say, it can go to the relevant court of appeals in the federal, the normal Article 3 court system. And so there will be.
Chris, just for those who aren't familiar with the legal distinctions here, and
Sure.
Correct me if I'm wrong, the immigration judge and the Board of Immigration Appeals are part of the executive branch.
That's right.
And when you talk about an Article 3 judge, you're talking about Article 3 of the Constitution,
Yes.
a member of the independent, constitutionally independent judiciary. So basically, this decision that Mahmur Khalil can be deported was taken by a Trump administration official, not by an independent federal judge. Is that correct?
That is correct. The way that the system is set up, is that all removal related adjudications are filtered into this administrative court system where employees of the Department of Justice are the administrative judges. And then there is an appeals process within that system, the Board of Immigration Appeals. And then the way that the Immigration and Nationality Act has set it up, it goes through that process. It results in either a positive ruling and the person is not removable, but more likely a final order of removal, which can then be appealed to the traditional sort of constitutionally independent courts under Article 3 of the Constitution. So there will be a point within that process when a independent judge. Now, I think, and it's obvious that everyone knows why they wanted him in Louisiana, so they could get into that circuit where they're more likely to get a favorable ruling. Now, concurrently, while that's happening, you have the case in New Jersey, which is in the District Court of New Jersey, and that is a habeas case. So that the goal of that case is to get him out of detention pending the immigration proceeding. So there's different angles this is happening in, and of course this is reflected in other cases as well with other incarcerated folks who had their visas revoked. There's always going to be this sort of parallel process. It really reveals, I think, and we just recently worked on a case with Mamadou Tall, the Ithaca student who ended up voluntarily leaving the country because of just the hell that they're putting everyone through. But that was a situation, right, in which we had to face head on because we had originally filed it as a pre-enforcement challenge, and then ICE showed up at his house. And we got an email at 1 a.m. from the Department of Justice demanding that we, his attorneys, turn him over to ICE custody. So the result of that is that because the removal proceeding had begun, they state, the day before we filed the lawsuit, it's taken out of the district court's hands and it has to be filtered into this process. So it's a tangled web, and it really reveals, I think, to go back to your question about what do rights mean. It's really important that people understand, especially in this context, the difference between the sort of legal theory of your rights, right? On paper, everyone in the United States, whether documented or undocumented, has First Amendment rights. But your rights are only as good as you can enforce them. And the way that the Immigration and Nationality Act has set it up is that your effort to protect those rights, to fight for those rights, is filtered into this system where you're not going to get as I mean, it's a joke. It's like a kangaroo court. Mm-hmm. And you have to wait years potentially to go to the courts that we traditionally sort of rely on. Meanwhile, they want to keep you in detention, far away from your family, and in Mr. Khalil's case, from his pregnant wife, and likely to miss his child's birth. Right? That's the point. Point. The cruelty is the point.
Yeah, and so, but I thought it was important to highlight, because a lot of people heard that the judge ruled that he can be deported, to understand that this is only the beginning of a legal process. We're not even at the legal process yet. So the real urgency here is to get him out of detention, and we have to hope that the federal judge in New Jersey rules for that, and that it can be enforced. But let's turn now, Chris. Last week, ADC issued a statement expressing its grave concern about the increasing pattern of harassment and intimidation directed at attorneys throughout the United States by officials from U.S. Customs and Border Protection, the Department of Homeland Security, and Immigration and Customs Enforcement, often called ICE. This includes the detention and interrogation of Dearborn, Michigan-based attorney Amir Meklid at Detroit Metro Airport, and a demand to search his devices. Since then, there have been reports that another Arab-American attorney, Bashir Atallah, was detained while returning from Canada by car after a weekend trip. They handcuffed me, they twisted my arm, my wrist, and treated me like a criminal, Atallah said. Atallah said that CBP agents demanded to go through his phone and that he consented, quote, under duress. And then yesterday, That's April 16th, the Center for Constitutional Rights revealed that a journalist who goes by the name Musa was detained after flying into Tampa, Florida from Cuba. In a statement, Musa said, quote, "I was told that most of your rights are suspended because this airport is a border crossing, including my right to a lawyer. I was interrogated by a counterterrorism agent and treated like a criminal and a terrorist. Synonyms this empire has long made interchangeable with being Black, Muslim, and politically active." Musa added, quote, "For roughly over 3 hours, I was held without access to legal counsel, aggressively questioned, patted down, and subjected to an invasive groin search." Musa refused repeated demands from the agents to power on and unlock their laptop and phone. The devices were confiscated and held by Customs and Border Protection, and Musa, supported by the Center for Constitutional Rights, has filed a lawsuit demanding their return. Chris, what's your reaction to these incidents at the border involving US citizens? And can you reiterate for us what the rights are of US citizens, lawful permanent residents, and non-immigrants, such as visitors or students at US borders?
Sure. So I think in terms of your first question regarding my reaction and our statement, I think it really comes from the same place, I think, as the efforts to have law firms bend the knee, to have universities bend the knee. It is an effort to cut off, to scare those institutions, those parts of society that are the tools by which people sort of, they use to fight back and to assert their rights. They there are, I think that they're surprised perhaps by how much of a fight is being put up by the folks that they are targeting. And so now they're going at the means by which they fight. They're trying to intimidate attorneys. And it's working in some cases. I mean, you've seen these law firms like make these insane deals that are just, I don't even know, I don't have words to describe them because they're just so disgusting and insane to me. But now they're going after these individual attorneys as well in attempts to, I think, deter them from taking on this work. And of course, I think it's also a part of the long history of harassment of Arab and Muslim folks at the border under the guise of national security and things like that. But I think we're seeing an intersection of those two motives now. Now, when it comes to the rights of folks at the border, I mean, again, I think just like in the immigration cases we're seeing, it reveals an underlying thing. I mean, I think maybe there's a misconception, right, that the administration is doing something. They're doing something new for sure and something extreme, but they're using tools that long predate this effort, right, and have been used for a long time for precisely these purposes, but perhaps not at this scale. And so it's as a legal matter, your rights are curtailed at the border, at ports of entry. There are fewer sort of protections there. The Fourth Amendment, which protects you from unreasonable searches and seizures, does not apply with the same force at the border as it does inside the United States. And so for citizens, the one thing that they cannot do is deny you entry into the United States. If you're a citizen of the United States, you must be allowed to enter the United States. They can, however, question you. They can have you declare if you have fruits or vegetables, right, in your bags. They can search your belongings when you come through. I think we're going to see, as this goes forward in litigation, the extent to which they can do things like search your phone. With attorneys, of course, there's complicated factors about attorney-client privilege. If they have work information on their phone, it can get really in the weeds, and I think we'll see how it develops. But they're going to try to stretch it as far as they can. When it comes to non-citizens, lawful permanent residents as well, like your green card cannot be revoked except through an administrative process, right? You have due process rights there. So they as well, I think, are unlikely to be denied entry with a green card. Though again, I think we'll see how far they push. It's clear to me that the administration is not treating green card holders as distinct from visa holders. They are treating them as a single sort of category. Folks on non-immigrant visas, like visitors or temporary work type things, when they re-enter the country, they are at the highest risk. Their rights are the most curtailed. That you don't have to give them, your phone information, but because they have such power over you, I mean, to the point where they can live revoke your visa, right? They can cancel your visa there and then put you into expedited removal proceedings, put you right back on a plane, and that comes with a ban, a 5-year ban on any sort of travel back into the United States. So you won't be able to even get a visa unless you go through these complicated processes to get waivers and things like that. So there's kind of a spectrum. And I think that the most severe, possible result is straight up denial of entry, which I think is a risk for folks on visas. Something in the middle, I think, in terms of risk for green card holders, depending on how far they push this. I don't believe we've seen green card holders denied entry at this just yet. And then citizens, I think they have to allow them entry, but they're going to do things like take your phone, et cetera, and we'll see how this litigation goes. But I think that at the end of the day, it is all of the same sort of effort to intimidate and to scare and to quash dissent.
One thing I want to come back to, though, Chris, I understand that, and just to focus on citizens for a moment, I understand that there are some gray areas at the border, and having had a lot of experience at the border, I've sort of educated myself over the years and tried to be very vigilant about what my rights are. And when you show up at the border, if you're coming into the United States and they want to question you or search you or take you for secondary inspection, they're going to tell you all sorts of things that are intended to make you believe they have more power than they do. So they have the right to search your baggage and your person for customs purposes. Are you bringing in fruits? Are you bringing in vegetables? Are you bringing in, huge quantities of cigarettes or Rolex watches or whatever it is, or undeclared currency over a certain amount? That's a customs search that they have the right to do. But you actually, and I'm going to put this forward, and then you can push back and correct me if I get something wrong. You don't actually have to answer any questions at all. Not even about whether you have fruit or vegetables, because they're free to search your baggage for fruits and vegetables. I mean, if they ask you if you have fruit or vegetables, I'll tell them the truth. I mean, never lie to them. That's certainly, you should never lie to them. Always tell the truth, but only answer the question. When it comes to things like searching a phone, they assert that their right to search you for fruits and vegetables and Rolex watches extends to the content of your phone. My assertion, and I think that this is legally grounded, is that they don't have that right.
Yeah.
They may assert that they have that right, and they're going to tell you, we search people's phones because we're protecting the United States from terrorism or child pornography or all sorts of things. But they cannot force you to give them permission to search your phone, your laptop. They cannot torture you to get your password. And they can seize your devices, but if you have taken the precautions you have a right to take to protect your privacy, well, if they can find a way to break into it for lawfully, then that's up to them. But you don't have to help them. And the reason I stress this is because I've seen in the recent reports, even attorneys consenting to searches of their phones, which surprised me. And that gives the impression that they have the right to go through your phone and search your contacts or search your emails or whatever it is. And I stress this because, you know, attorneys have privileged information on their phone, but we all have, you know, we all have
Yeah.
personal things on our phone. Journalists have perhaps sources, you know, sources they've been communicating with. And I just want to get some clarity about that, so we don't do the government's work
Yeah.
by convincing people that at the border you have no rights. And I get that for non-citizens, whether they're green card holders or visa holders, they are in a more precarious situation. But this administration is trying to extend that vulnerability to everyone, including citizens. Can I get your comments on what I've just said?
No, I think that's correct. There's no doubt, right, that you do not have to answer these questions. I mean, you have to make the sort of required customs sort of things that you mentioned. You do not have to give access to your phone. I think that what we're seeing is, it goes back to what I said earlier about, like, you have rights, and then what is the practical, like, you know, I'm not. I think that you have different. The reason that attorneys, I think, are giving different information on this is because it depends really on how you look at it. I think if you're just giving a statement of, like, these are your rights, fine, that's true. And you don't have to answer, you don't have to do this. You can sit there and assert yourself, and that might be. I think a lot of it depends on where you're at, who the particular people at that particular port of entry involved. There are some airports that are worse than others for these sorts of things. And there's a sort of individual determination made about whether the strategic thing to do to get out of that situation is to fight back. Some places that makes sense, and then they'll just give up. They'll just be like, well, I can't do anything, and they'll just give up. In other places, they'll take your phone and force you to file a lawsuit. Right. So I think that it's true, and everything you're saying is correct, and people should understand that you absolutely have the right to say no. And then I think on an individual level, people have to do their own risk assessments and make determinations about, you know, and we advise people to just have your phones be, you know, if you're traveling internationally, just like have it be such that it doesn't matter whether you give them your phone. Maybe you don't have your WhatsApp groups or whatever on it. And obviously, I don't like telling people that, because you shouldn't have to make decisions like that. But I think that there's a balance between sort of the assertion, and then for people who are potentially in vulnerable positions, have somewhere to go, don't have the, you know, ability to be detained, don't want to go through that, to sort of make determinations in a practical sense about, you know, what sort of things I'm going to decide to do in this particular situation so I can get out of here. And I don't know that it cuts both ways. I think cooperation can lead to abuse, and maybe you'll get your phone taken anyway. And on the other hand, you know, refusing might do that, or it might make them give up. It's really hard to say at the abstract level. So while yes, it's true, you don't have to. I think that everyone has to make their own risk assessments in a moment like this, and determine for themselves how much tolerance they have for a fight. And I don't blame anybody really, for sort of protecting themselves in the way that they see fit. Whether they're going to, you know, sort of have that, you know, because it really could get contentious. I mean, it's just real talk. These are not nice people that we're dealing with, and it could be a very difficult situation. So I don't blame people for trying to get through it, but I think you have to really think carefully about whether you're in a situation in which you want to have you do that. And I don't really advise in either direction. I think it depends on the specifics. I think it depends on that particular person's risk, about which way you're gonna go. So yes, the rights are clear, and that's true. Whether you want to be the person who's the test case, I think, is an individual determination that people are going to make for themselves. And that's why you're going to see different, I think, reactions from different people in that situation.
And that's definitely true. But I think it's important that people know what their rights are.
Yes,
and there
absolutely.
are certainly situations where they'll ask, I've had this, where they'll ask one or two more questions than I think they should. And I'll just be, you know, if I think it's an innocuous enough question, I'll just answer it to get through, because I'm not losing anything. But if it comes to, like, we're going to search your phone as a journalist, that may be where I choose to assert my rights. So, but the important thing is, I just don't want people to go away with the impression that people should make their choices from a position of knowing what their rights are, not going into it believing that they have no rights.
Yeah, no, it is absolutely not the case that statement they made about your rights are suspended at the border as a citizen is a completely false statement. The particulars at the border are different than if you're walking down the street, but it is entirely too much to say that your rights are suspended, and people should make determinations with the knowledge of both what their rights are and the particulars of their situation, and come to their own conclusions, potentially with the advice of an attorney if they're going to travel.
Those are really, really good reminders. Thank you so much, Chris. ADC is a civil rights organization that engages in litigation, but it's also a community organization that seeks to mobilize people to take action. What are some of the ways people can push back against these abuses, against, as you mentioned, the point of all of this is cruelty. It's to instill fear and intimidation. It's to make people not trust one another, and ultimately to shut up about Palestine. So, what are the ways that that the community can actually organize and fight back?
Yeah, I think this is a moment in which it's a moment of defense for sure, right? In a way that it hasn't been, at least not so profoundly. I think there's a real need to sort of protect each other. And so I think what people should do depends on how they're situated. I think an ADC is a membership-based organization, as you said, and so we have folks who are citizens, non-citizens, green card holders, all manner of folks of different status. And so I think that it's incumbent on citizens right now to assert these rights, right? To not go quietly, to continue to agitate and advocate and to push back. I think that it remains to be seen whether the courts are going to fulfill their duty to protect the First Amendment right now. It really just remains to be seen. We have not seen yet, right, the application of in that the orders right now are focused on immigration consequences, but there's the seeds of criminal enforcement of anti-discrimination laws and material support statutes and other such things against citizens as well for their advocacy. So that legal fight, I suspect, is to come. And we're going to see what the courts are willing to do. But in the meantime, the only way to sort of fight back against the suppression of First Amendment rights is to vigorously exercise those First Amendment rights. And that looks different for different people, right? I think it's totally reasonable for non-citizens in our community to be cautious, right? The consequences are severe. And I think it's okay for people to make decisions that are best for themselves while they're doing it, as long as we also have a robust citizen response doing everything they can. And I mean at the level of like go out in the streets. I mean, this is an all hands on deck. This is the worst case scenario, right? This isn't some policy disagreement that people can sort of casually protest and you're okay if it doesn't go your way. This is the fundamentals. And so it's get out there, it's tweet, it's every tool in the toolbox needs to be used. Press Congress for whatever that's worth. And I say that with like sort of a, I'm a bit of a skeptic, but I think we can't give up on that tool, even if it doesn't go anywhere. Press these folks who are just, I don't even know what they're doing, giving speeches for 25 hours that don't do anything, to do more. I mean, I think just you have to put them to task. And then also I think form this, especially the immigration battle right now, is not fought alone by those involved in Palestine activism, right? This is a broader effort. So I think we need to find, and I would encourage folks to find solidarity opportunities with other communities that are facing this. The Latino community, for example, right, which stands to experience a lot of harm from these sorts of efforts when the sort of effort broadens even more than it already has. So, and then folks who don't have any skin in the game, to take note and understand that this is not going to stop here, right? This is not, you can't just give up. The First Amendment cannot apply in this sort of haphazard way. It can't not apply to some people, and the people who you can't feel comfortable that it's going to apply to you if it doesn't apply to others. So at the end of the day, I think that real talk, it really is it's a hard question to answer. The traditional tools have not worked, right? So we're going to continue to fight in the courts, to push the courts to do what they need to do, to gum up the works, to slow this down, to say what the limits are as they push them. But at the end of the day, the only thing that is really ever going to systematically change anything is people really putting their foot down and demanding that this stop. And that happens in the streets, not in the courts.
A very sobering situation, a very serious situation, and we want to try to inform people, let them know about their rights without scaring people more, and that's a fine balance too. People should remain involved. We're still here. We're not going to be intimidated by this. We're going to exercise our rights, and people should do that, but from a position of knowing what their rights are. And again, solidarity is so important. Communities staying together, speaking out on behalf of those who are targeted. One of our colleagues in a private discussion made a point that I think it was Senator Van Hollen went to El Salvador to try to see this, to see the unjustly, illegally deported person, Mr. Garcia, who is being held there in that disgusting prison. But we don't know of any senator who traveled to Louisiana to try to check on Mahmur Khalil or on Rumeysa 𝐓𝐡𝐞. So we need to keep pushing them. We need to be calling them and saying, why aren't you doing more for your constituents and for these members of our community? So we need to remember to do that too.
Absolutely.
Chris, we're so grateful to you. This is really important stuff, and I know we're going to be talking about it for a long time, so we hope you'll come back and help us keep understanding this as it develops. We're grateful to you and your colleagues at ADC for standing up for everyone's rights, and people can learn more at adc.org, right?
That's right.
All right. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you so much, Chris.
Come back soon.
It's fantastic.
Appreciate you.
Thank you.